The Atlantic Coast Conference and ESPN have agreed to an extension in their media rights, grant of rights package until 2036, which was the final ending date, but ESPN had a possible out in their contract in 2027. But even though we got Clemson lawsuits and Florida State lawsuits against the ACC because of that terrible 20-year television deal that was signed by the ACC back in 2016, everybody's happy. Everybody's together again. Why? Because the ACC has this thing. It looks like they're going to have this thing called a brand fund that allows the Clemsons and the Florida States and the Miamis and the North Carolinas, the higher performing schools that attract the most revenue, are going to be paid out at a higher rate within the ACC. I'm not ACC Allen. I'm Big Ten Ted. So now let's maybe focus on how this affects the Big Ten. Now, even if that contract expired in 2027, I don't know how aggressive the Big Ten would have been in ACC expansion. That's another hypothetical topic for maybe never on this channel. But I think with the ACC and ESPN renewing their contract, extending their contract to the full expiration date, that is officially going to create some stability, much needed stability this year within the Big Ten. I look around at the success that the Big Ten had on the football field this year. I look around at the Big Ten and see how much money they are bringing in every year from this Fox, CBS, and NBC television deal. The Big Ten is in the ultimate position of power. And now I think this is maybe a clear sign for all of us officially to be able to move in the direction of stability, specifically for those 4 West Coast schools. When we've talked about integrating teams in the past, remember when you had the original 10, you added Penn State in the early 90s, and then it was a long time before Nebraska joined the conference, and then shortly thereafter, Rutgers and Maryland joined the conference. In typical Jim Delaney fashion, these were additions from contiguous states. So the integration didn't really take a ton of effort, really didn't take a lot of time to be able to kind of get them really in as Big Ten members. I think that this is a little bit different with teams on the West Coast. These are teams that are 2 time zones over. You see UCLA head coach for men's basketball, Mick Cronin, still talking about some of the time zone and scheduling quirks in the Big Ten right now. And look, when you add 4 teams from a conference that's 2 time zones away, you're not going to figure everything out right away. So I think the stability for whether it's for 5 years or 10 years, my hope is for maybe 10. For 10 years, my hope is that we're going to be able to maybe figure out some of these things that maybe aren't working 100% the best right now, specifically with these West Coast schools. And it allows them, not only in football, but in basketball and volleyball, in some of these other Olympic sports, it allows them to fully establish themselves as Big Ten members. I still think they still feel a little bit in some instances. It still feels like a non-conference game. And now if you're able to create some stability and some very familiarity between these teams throughout year after year after year after year without any other additions and without any other influxes in scheduling, I think that's only a positive right now for what the Big Ten Conference is truly building. Last thing on this particular topic as it pertains to maybe conference expansion in the future. You know, I start to look around this conference and I look at some of the teams out there and I look down to Miami, I look down to Florida State, I look down to Clemson. I know maybe I had a little bit of a different thought last summer, but I kind of look down at these programs and to me, they don't really check boxes. They don't really seem like great fits for the Big Ten right now down in that particular area. I know maybe teams like North Carolina and Virginia might seem like a little bit better fits for the Big Ten, but what they maybe bring in academics, they maybe don't bring as strong of a presence in athletics that the Big Ten is certainly looking for. They are in a position of power. We are in an era where we don't really want to split the pie more than we really have to. There is one combination left from now until the sun explodes that the Big Ten should really invest in as their one move in conference realignment. And it's Notre Dame. Surprise, freaking prize. But here's the thing about Notre Dame and the Big Ten that we all need to understand. Whether you love Notre Dame as a Big Ten fan, whether you hate Notre Dame as a Big Ten fan, and there's probably more of you that hate Notre Dame as a Big Ten fan, but I've never been in that camp where I absolutely hate Notre Dame. If I was Notre Dame, I'd be doing the same exact thing that I would be but they are doing right now. I think there are a lot of schools out there that would be doing the same thing that Notre Dame is doing if they could. But the Big Ten, considering what we're making from a television perspective and the revenue that we are bringing in right now, the success that we have had on the football field, the Big Ten doesn't need Notre Dame right now. And then you look at Notre Dame and this ACC deal, and a part of that ACC deal is Clemson, Miami, Florida State. Some of these bigger brands are going to be playing Notre Dame more often. Notre Dame gets exactly what they want, folks. Notre Dame doesn't need the Big Ten right now. These two parties don't need each other. But we know the clause that's in the Big Ten television contract as it pertains to the Fighting Irish. If there is an opportunity down the road, and for me, if I'm Tony Petitti, this is the one opportunity that I would give and be open to for expansion, Notre Dame and a dance partner. And for me, that dance partner is probably Stanford. If you've been following me on the Twitter sphere, you've probably seen me tweet pro Stanford future Big Ten membership. And it's mostly because of Stanford's relationship with Notre Dame. When Stanford was kind of out in the cold, when we had the Pac-4 after all of the alignment coming to the Big Ten and the Big 12 from the Pac-12, it was Notre Dame that said, well, we can't leave a great institution like Stanford, and I guess Cal, but we can't leave a great academic institution, athletic institution like Stanford all alone. We got to find a way to get them into the ACC. And their independent half ACC brother brought them into the ACC as a full member and gave them a lifeline and gave them the influence to have a conference partnership at the power conference level. If Notre Dame is going to bring a dance partner, it's probably going to be Stanford. Of course, they have a football series with Stanford. And boy, bringing in Notre Dame and bringing in Stanford, the Big Ten might already be there already, but it would be an academic powerhouse. It would be an absolute athletic powerhouse with Notre Dame and Stanford. Like when you talk about it from an academic perspective, it doesn't get any better than the folks down there in Palo Alto, California. Like I've always had this opinion about Stanford that if football was one of their top priorities as a university, they got a lot going on. They got a lot that they got to figure out there, certainly at Stanford. But if football was truly one of their top priorities, we'll see if Andrew Luck can convince them to get there as the GM over there. But they have that FU money. They have money in places that we don't even have places, right? So that would be, I know that they might not be the biggest football powerhouse in the world, but pairing them with Notre Dame and an extra travel partner out on the West Coast, I think would benefit everybody involved.